Hey parents, welcome to the Mommy Pod, where we keep it real about parenthood. The joy, the chaos, and everything in between. I'm your host, a single mom, educator, and everyday woman learning to give herself grace while chasing her dreams. Whether you're folding laundry, stuck in traffic, or sneaking in 5 minutes of peace, this space is your reminder that you're not alone. And you're doing better than you think. So, grab a coffee, grab a tea, grab a drink, take a deep breath, and let's get into today's episode. Hey moms and dads, welcome back to the Mommy Pod. This is a space for real conversations, not just highlight reels, not just buy my book, but how did you actually get through it? Because a lot of us are out here trying to survive, rebuild, raise kids, co-parent, make money, and still figure out who we are. And today's guest, I am excited for. Today we have Danielle Frank, and her story is layered. She started in Hollywood publicity at Miramax, then transitioned into the wine and spirit industry, building luxury brands with companies like Bacardi, Hennessy, Moët, and I'm probably saying these names all wrong. Dom Perignon and Veuve. You can correct me.
Veuve Clicquot. Veuve rhymes with love. That's how you remember it.
Oh, that love. Very nice. I've always seen it like on the Housewives.
You know what? On my interview with Moët Hennessy, I said Moet and it's really Moet, and I said Veuve and it's Veuve. So it happens to everybody.
And you're also the author of A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting. But today we're not just going to talk about your book. We are going to talk about your book, but we're actually going to talk about how you built this life, what parenting looked like from your perspective as a bonus mom, money, career pivots, and real struggles, and what it takes to stand on your own 2 feet. Danielle, I want to start with this because a lot of people hear your background and think successful luxury brands, Hollywood. But let's strip that down a little bit. What did your life actually look like in the early days for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on your great podcast. Yeah, my story is sort of rooted in transformation, right? We all kind of grew up imagining you're on this one path, this one journey. And for me, I was going to work in the entertainment industry. I loved film and TV, and that was going to be my path. And I was living in New York. I'm from New York, and with the eye on the prize of get married by this age, late 20s, early 30s, have kids soon thereafter. But slowly, life started to present itself, as I'd like to say, because that's what happens, right? Isn't there that joke, that saying that God's joke is when you make plans or something like that. But I with my job at Miramax, I started working at Miramax Films, which is the only studio in New York, and it's where you wanted to be. And I was there at the heyday. And I worked in international PR, traveling the world, the globe, going, to the Cannes Film Festival, Venice Film Festival, to Tokyo to promote this film with this actor, and living the life. And I think part of that, I mean, I've always been somebody who was curious about the world. I studied abroad in college, but I think, having had those opportunities, that was sort of the first awakening to, oh wait, you know what? There's a lot of interesting things out there. I still have a lot I want to do. Um, and I started to kind of refocus and reposition, the idea that like, wait, maybe I'm not ready to be married right away. There's still a lot I want to do. And one of those things was I wanted to move to LA. And I moved to LA and I quit my job, and there were no studio jobs at the time. So I signed with a personal PR agency, which, I kind of knew that was not my journey, but I was so ready to get to LA at this point that I was like, I talked myself into it. I was like, no, it's going to be great being a personal publicist. Kudos to personal publicists, no disrespect to them. It's not my thing. I don't care more about, somebody else's life and their schedule ahead of mine, canceling my dinner plans because they call for something last minute. that's just not me. And, to boot, I had signed with an agency that is very toxic. I mean, I showed up the first day and three of the publicists were crying in the office. And yeah, and so longer story short, I started to in my 3 months there, I always say like in my time in Miramax, sure, in my 20s, did I go out the night before? And, when I woke up and I was like, oh, I wish I didn't have to go to work. Yeah. But there was never a day where I had that angst in my stomach, that pit in my stomach about, oh, I just don't want to go to work, that ulcer-inducing feeling. And when I was at this PR agency, I had that feeling many mornings. And, that was another sort of light bulb moment, an aha moment that like, my personal peace was being sacrificed. And we spend half of our lives at work, and my personal happiness was more important than my health. And so I quit without having another job, which is very unlike me. But, I say it comes with a little bit of naivety. I mean, I was, 30 years old and didn't have a mortgage, didn't have kids that I had to, feed and all that. Didn't even have a dog yet. So, um, yeah, I just thought I'll be fine. And then, somebody told me about this job working for Bacardi, and I thought it'd be temporary. I took a big step back. It was very elementary and took a 50% pay cut. And I was like, oh, this will be great until I figure out what it is I want to do. And there again, life presented itself to me in a new journey and a new path and a new plan that it turns out, the wine and spirits industry is a fantastic industry and representing fantastic brands. I've been fortunate to work with great companies. Now I've been here, going on 22 years in this industry. And here we are. And then last year I brought my book to life, A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting, which we'll chat about how it marries all these things from my life, the not getting to have motherhood aspect, but still wanting a seat at the table and combining my love for wine and spirits, all in one package.
Thank you so much for all of that. That was really great. You answered all of my first few questions, like what was your turning point moment? Your turning point moment was getting that pit in your stomach on your way to work. And I think that that is something that's tangible that a lot of people can relate to and understand. So if anybody's listening and you get that pit in your stomach, that feeling, might be time to move on. And that's really great that you were introduced to something different and you took that leap. Some of us might be scared to take that leap, to hear that you get a pay cut and it's elementary from where you've been. That was a big leap of faith. And that's really great that you did it and it paid off.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, the most empowering decision is to acknowledge that not just the job or, like you said, the relationship or the version of the life that you're clinging to is costing you peace. And when you pause long enough just to listen, pivots can be invitations, not endings. They can lead us towards work and lives that feel more aligned, honest, and what I've learned, frankly, more fulfilling.
Let's talk about the non-traditional motherhood. So one thing I really respect about your story is that motherhood didn't look traditional for you. Can you talk about that, the emotional side of that and what you may have expected?
Yeah, I mean, I had planned on being a mother. I'm great with kids, and I was engaged to be married, and my ex has kids from his first marriage. So I was a bonus mom for many years. And I'm an auntie to my niece and nephew. And I'm Aunt Danielle to so many of my friends' kids. So, but when I was with my ex, I just started to realize that ultimately he didn't want more kids. And, we were together 6+ years and, he pretty much told me that from the start and sort of waffled back and forth. But it wasn't until we got engaged, and we weren't engaged that long, maybe less than 6 months, is when I really started to, sometimes I say you need to go through it to get out of it. And I feel like I needed to get to that point to finally open my eyes and see as we were planning the wedding, he just everything was like, oh, let's have a long engagement. Oh, do you really want kids? And so it just sort of gave me that aha moment that this guy really doesn't want kids. He said he'd have a kid, but do I really want that? I want to be with somebody that is dying to have a kid with me. And so I broke it off and I was, late 30s at this point. And so I, realized that path of motherhood might not happen for me. But it doesn't mean the nurturing goes away. And so that's where this kind of all came together because, as I said, I'm a glass half full kind of person, and I just want to make the world a better place. And so even though, I might not be able to have direct impact on kids that I'm raising, I still want a seat at the table to how kids are raised well. How the next generation of human beings are, being raised with decency. I have a vested interest in how my niece and nephew are being raised and how my friends' kids. So, I think that, as an auntie unofficial, I sort of get the best seat in the house. I witness the chaos, the triumphs, the tantrums, but all, without the 3 a.m. wake up calls or the carpool duty. But, from the sidelines, I can cheer, I can laugh, I love. It gives me a lighter lens to see parenthood with humor, with compassion. Because sometimes when you're so into it, it's hard to see what's right in front of you. And you know, I always say that I've heard parents trade war stories like battle-hardened soldiers, in the trenches. And like I said, when you're in it, sometimes it's not so easy that grape juice that you're drinking can one day turn into a fine Cabernet. And I also say that, everything in my book it's about human decency, like teaching kids manners, teaching kids not to be a bully, basic human behavior. And you don't need to be a parent to know basic human behavior, what that needs to be exhibited by all human beings. So yeah, all that kind of, coupled with, all those things came together for me to create this love letter to parents everywhere on just, raising good human beings, but related to wine terminology. Because again, as somebody who works in the wine and spirits industry and a lover of wine, it was easy for me to see just sort of the fun parallels to wine terminology and how you can equate it to human behavior.
That does sound super fun. So let's go. Thank you for sharing, and thank you. I bet you're like the best auntie. And I feel I feel that it's really great when you can spend so much time and love on them and have fun and then give them back.
Exactly. And, I take them to escape rooms. I dope them up on sugar and then send them home with, where they're bouncing off the walls and not going to bed.
Oh goodness. Yeah, you're the fun auntie. All right, let's talk about your book. So your book, A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting. Um, what made you write it right now? Or when did you write it and what made you write it?
So I actually wrote it about 14 years ago. It was right at the time I broke off my engagement. And at that time, my niece and nephew were little kids, and I was watching them. And although they're great kids, of course, every kid has the propensity to whine. And they were whining about something. And I said, Aunt Danielle drinks wine. She doesn't listen to wine. And so the wheels all started turning. Again, it was right when I broke off my engagement. So I had this sort of urge in me to, again, have the seat at the table to help shape how kids are raised. Also, again, as somebody who works in the wine industry, I love the idea of making wine knowledge easy and accessible. It shouldn't be daunting. People get so intimidated by wine, and if they see the wine list, it doesn't have to be intimidating. And you don't need to be an expert. What I like, you might not like, and vice versa. It's all, we all have different palates. We all have different memories of what a wine evokes out of us and reminds us of. So and right at this time also a book came out by Adam Mansbach called Go the F to Sleep. Wildly popular, written like a children's book, but made for adults. So it sort of opened up this avenue for this new genre of adult children's books. So that all came together with this idea that I had because I love to rhyme and I love the idea of rhyming and making it like a children's book. So it's illustrated, it rhymes. Every time I use wine terminology, it gives the definition, but it's definitely not made for kids.
Love that. That sounds so fun. I can't wait to read it. I'm not a big wine drinker. I love wine. However, I get sick, like the acid. So
Yeah.
I have to either drink organic wines I find are okay with my body or just non-alcoholic wine. But yes, I can't wait to read that. So writing that book right after your right after you called off your engagement, that must have been really hard, but was it also healing for you to like pour yourself into that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it is. Writing for me is therapeutic. Um, sometimes I'll just like, even when I broke up with him, like I would just write to myself sometime letters. Like, I know it sounds weird, but therapy, I tried therapy once and it works for many people. For me, I found it didn't work because I was lying to my therapist and I was like, there's something wrong with this. That totally obviously defeats the purpose. But I know the concept of therapy is, they're not supposed to give you the answers. They're supposed to ask the questions so that you're bringing the answers outside of yourself and you're hearing it for yourself and you're bringing, what's inside to the surface. And that's what writing does for me. So even just writing to myself, it's sort of like me talking out loud and talking about, what's inside and how I'm feeling and so forth. So it is very therapeutic for me. And yeah, so this became sort of part of that therapy as well. Like I said, realizing motherhood, that path might not happen for me, but I like the idea of having that seat at the table of being a contributor to how kids are raised well. So yeah, it's sort of a love letter to parents out there and homage to all the great jobs they're doing.
What do you hope a parent feels when they are reading your book?
I hope they feel, I mean, I hope they laugh, a little levity, right? I mean, parents have the toughest job in the world. And, it's a very serious job. And sometimes you need a pause, you need a breather, and you need to laugh. But also, I've heard some parents say, um, there's a chapter in there about, is your kid a mulled wine? So mulled wines are heated up, they're spiced, sometimes served in a punch bowl. So this chapter is about, is your kid a mulled wine? Is he spiced? Is he heated? Basically, is he a bully outside the home? And it's important that you know that. So I really love that a lot of parents have said to me that resonated with them, that chapter, because we've all been guilty of it, like not my kid. It's hard to imagine that it's your kid that might actually be the bully. And a few parents have said, that reading that chapter, it was just a light way and a serious way to remind them, like, oh, you know what, I really need to understand who my kid is outside the home. He might be sweet as pie here, but if there's even an inkling of them, bullying any kid, I need to nip that in the bud. And when I hear that, it makes me know that I've done my job, right? Parents, like I said, it's basic human behavior. I'm not proclaiming to be like a clinical psychologist who studied parenting and all that. It's all basic, teaching kids manners, not to be a bully. And, some parents have said, like, sometimes you just need a gentle reminder about that. Or sometimes you need a gentle reminder, like the chapter about, letting them breathe, letting them learn to fall to get back up. Because of course it's easy to want to coddle your kids. And so, it's nice to just sometimes get a little humorous, light way of, a nudge to be like, yeah, I do need to let my kid breathe. I do need to, make them worldly and all that.
My goodness, thank you so much. Can we go into you reading a little bit from your book?
Yeah, I'd love to read a chapter. So this one is, you don't want your kids to ferment. So in wine terminology, in winemaking, the fermentation process is when you turn sugar into alcohol. And so obviously we think of sugar as something sweet, alcohol we think of something harsh and biting. So this is about, you want to teach your kids manners so they don't turn into someone harsh and biting. Manners, manners, manners are the key to it all. These lessons need to start even when they're small. Teach them this from day one before they start to crawl. You don't want your kid to be the sour grape in the bunch, turn into a spoiled brat that kids want to punch. When they start talking, make sure they know thank you and please, and to always say bless you when they hear someone sneeze. Please and thank you are an absolute must. Without that, your child's a total bust. There's nothing worse than a child who has behavior that is crude, because it'll continue as they're older and become someone who's rude. People don't take kindly to and aren't nice to those with attitude, because it's very off-putting and puts others in a bad mood, oftentimes causing confrontation and leads to a nasty feud. Wanting to put a little bit of poison in your child's food. Is it really how you want your kids to be viewed? Wouldn't you prefer that there's someone who's wooed? Without manners, they'll ferment and turn into someone harsh and biting. They may turn into a kid who's rude, obnoxious, and always fighting. So teach your kids some manners and to have some heart and soul. Without that, your kid may well turn into an a-hole.
That's so great. Oh my God,
Thank you.
that is so good.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
have to get your book. Please tell us where we can find your book.
The book is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
Amazing. And I will put a link in our show notes. For closing this out, um, for the parents that are listening right now that are stressed, drained, or trying to rebuild, or doesn't feel put together, what would you say?
I say, just like, think about when you are opening a bottle of wine, you pour that glass, you just take a moment to breathe it in, right? And that's what parents need to do. Sometimes you just need to not even just parents, we all sometimes just need a moment to breathe it in, take it all in, take a moment. I mean, how many times have I said, stop and breathe before you send off that email response, things like that. We all just can, take that pause, to savor the moment, to, take a beat, to refresh, and regroup. And there's nothing wrong with taking that pause and breathing it in.
That is very good advice. Very, very good. This episode, this is what the Mummy Pod is about. Not perfection, not curated success, but a real people like figuring it out and creating something amazing for the world to enjoy and for our children to learn from. This is so great. Um, Danielle, thank you so much for being honest and for being here with us today and for reminding us that parenting and nurturing don't have to look one way.
Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely to chat with you.
Thank you. Before we go, I just want to say thank you. The Mommy Pod is built in the middle of real life: work, kids, laundry, rebuilding, and dreaming. And every time you listen, share, or support what we create here, it truly matters. If this episode spoke to you, one of the best ways to keep this podcast going is by supporting our Mommy Pod products. From our children's books and activity books to our calming sprays and digital downloads designed for moms and parents and families. Everything you purchase goes directly back into keeping the show alive. And if you can't purchase right now, sharing this episode with another parent means just as much. Thank you for being here.